I call this meeting of the Seaside Planning Commission to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the time and place duly advertised for the Seaside Planning Commission to hold its monthly meeting. Agenda items can be initiated by the general public, any legal property owner, Seaside City Council, city staff, and the Seaside Planning Commission. Does anyone present feel the commission lacks the authority to hear any item on the agenda? Jordan, nobody electronically either? No, I said electronically. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Are there any corrections, deletions, or additions to the minutes of April 4th, 2023? Hearing none, the minutes are adopted as written. It is standard procedure for the members of the commission to visit the sites to be dealt with at these meetings. Do any commissioners wish to declare an ex parte contact or a conflict of interest? Hearing none. The following public hearing requirements apply to the items on our agenda. The applicable criteria for the hearing items are listed in the staff reports prepared for this meeting. Testimony and evidence shall be directed toward applicable criteria listed in the staff reports or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which you believe applies to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. The applicant will testify first, followed by any others in favor of the request, then any opposition will testify, and then the applicant will be given time for a rebuttal. For testimony, we will hear from the in-person attendees, followed by electronic attendees. When the time comes to hear from the members of the public attending electronically, there's a feature in the attendee view that allows you to electronically raise your hand by clicking on the control panel at the bottom of your screen. Phone attendees can raise their hand by pressing *9. You will then be placed into a queue, and when your time comes to speak, you will be unmuted and can address the commission. Our moderator of the comments, Administrative Assistant Jordan Sprague, will monitor this area and let us know when the citizens that have virtually raised their hand are ready to make comments via Zoom or by phone. Background noise must be kept to a minimum while testifying, or your testimony time will be ended early. Prior to testifying, please state your full name, your address for the record, and please limit your comments to 4 minutes. Public hearing items. The first public hearing item on the agenda is 22-064 CU. Mr. Planning Director.
Thank you, Chair Montero. Tonight we have a conditional use request for a dwelling unit located in the general commercial C3 zone. The unit's going to be contained in an existing building. The applicant is looking to turn the building into office spaces with a parking lot and then a dwelling unit that's attached towards I believe the site plan shows a northeast side of the structure. The applicants presented a site plan that shows they have sufficient parking for the proposed use as office space. The use as a dwelling and additional parking spaces that the applicant would like to lease out to neighboring businesses, whomever, as a paid parking facility. The applicant's required to maintain and sign the parking lot and stripe the parking lot to show where the proposed parking is going to be for the dwelling unit, for the office space, and which ones will be designated as the paid parking spaces. You'll see through the staff report, there's findings and conclusions that go over the zoning criteria and criteria within our ordinance, as well as, I believe, 7 proposed conditions, which include condition 1, the signage for the no parking may be necessary and maybe needs to be beefed up pursuant to the fire marshal's inspection should it be shown that vehicles are parking alongside the building on the south end and on the east end to maintain fire access through there. Condition 2, the trash and recycle area must be sufficient for the proposed uses, as well as needs to be screened from public view. They'll need to obtain permits from Public Works. The driveway approach along Avenue N will need to be moved to be in conjunction with their proposed driveway area, as well as the sidewalk along Avenue N will need to be fully improved the length of their frontage along the street. The building department will require a change of occupancy permit for the building to be converted into a residential use, and all the building code requirements will need to be met, and permits received and pass final inspection before occupancy. Within this zone, vacation rental dwellings are not permitted, so there's a condition that prohibits any kind of short-term rental of that dwelling unit in the zone. And the site plan has been reviewed by planning, building, fire, and public works. They've all approved the site plan as it's seen on the screen. Any modifications to that will have to be approved by the community development director in conjunction and in consultation with those other departments to ensure any modifications do not affect their approval of their fire and life safety plan. There are recommendations towards the end of the staff report with alternatives that the Planning Commission could elect to adopt the findings and justification statements within the report and approve the application, or modify the report with their own findings and conclusions. The commission could add additional conditions pursuant to any public comment we may receive. And the commission also could elect to continue this to the next hearing, which I believe would be June 6, 2023, or the commission could, provided they have justifications and findings to deny the permit, vote to deny the application.
All righty. Thank you. Is there anybody here who would like to represent this project, please? Hi. Please state your name and address.
My name is Matt Johnson with Lift Architecture. I'm the architect. My address is 1130 Liberty Street, Southeast, Suite 230, Salem, Oregon.
And don't hesitate to speak up in that microphone, because I can tell you that it doesn't pick up on the recording very well otherwise.
You got it. I'll
Thank
be louder.
So tell us all about it.
Well, Jeff always does such a great job of explaining it. Thank you, Jeff. I actually don't really have much to add. The main components are having the apartment in the back of the building that is intended to be owner/operator occupied. Would be restriping the parking lot to meet current zoning standards, adding a little fenced area that screens the trash, adding bicycle parking, and then extending the sidewalk along the frontage on Avenue H. And that's kind of the extent of the project. So unless there are immediate questions from the commission for me, I guess I'll take a seat for public comments.
There probably will be, but if you care to take a seat, that's great if you're wrapped up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in favor of this project? Is there anybody here opposed to this project? Hearing none, and nobody online, Jordan? Okay, in that case, I will turn it over to the commission. So if you would like to come back up, it's a short walk. All righty. Let me start with Mr. Rose. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't. Not at this time.
Mr. Newbecker?
Not at this time.
Ms. Klezak?
Sure do. Let me just see if I can find them. Okay. I have a question first for the planning director. The conditional use, let me find my notes. If this conditional use is approved, does it apply to the property or the building?
It'll apply to the project as a whole. It's being reviewed under what they're presenting as the site plan and as the floor plan. If they were to tear this building down and rebuild it, correct me if I'm not understanding your correction. If they were to tear this building down and rebuild and still want to maintain the conditional use, the conditions under which, if you were to approve it as a planning commission, the conditions under which you would have approved it would have changed. They would have to come in and have that modified. And they would have to come back before the planning commission for approval in order to do that.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that is
Okay.
exactly what I'm asking. And so because the height and building restrictions are mentioned, and so I just wanted to know, great, so we approve it for this, the next
Yes.
5 years, it works like that. They decide they want to put a second floor on because the occupancy thing is working for them, the mixed use. Do they have to reapply?
You were approving it under the evidence and submitted by the applicant and reviewed by our department, fire department, public works, and building. Any deviation from that, any major deviation from that would have to come back to the planning commission for review.
So we would be approving a conditional use for one housing unit.
One dwelling unit within an existing building.
Okay,
yes.
thank you. That may have just resolved all of them. The signage that you're talking about, who's responsible for maintaining the visibility of the signage for entering and exiting the parking lot? Who limits the exiting and entering? Is it self-governed by them, or does the city set those restrictions?
We don't typically set those restrictions. However, we can condition that the signage and I'm assuming you're talking about the striping, the entrance and exiting. I think that if you can show a specific reason why we would need to make sure and maintain that, such as vehicular traffic on Holiday is significantly higher than on Avenue H. So having an entrance only off a Holiday and an entrance exit off of Avenue H makes sense. I think we can.
Which is exactly what you mentioned, that it is existing right now. I'd like to make sure that we condition that it is signage, the stripage and directions are maintained that way by the landowner, property owner.
So would it be, would the commission be opposed to modifying condition 4, which states the applicant's parking lot will need sufficient striping and signage to designate which parking spaces are reserved for tenants' use. 11 parking spaces shall be designated for the proposed uses within the building. The remaining spaces can be used for paid lease parking, and add a sentence in there that the parking lot striping and directional signage will need to be maintained by the building owner, and maintain entrance only on Avenue or on Holiday, entrance exits on Avenue H.
Yes. I'm fine with that. I can't speak for the rest of the planning commission.
It's a good one.
Anything else?
Just one question for clarification, Mr. Planning Director. In 5, increasing the number of required off-street parkings, you use the word tenant and renter. What's the difference?
On where are we at on the?
Section J,
Okay.
number 5. I think you sort of clarified it in the explanation with the leasing, but the terms here are different than what you used previously, which is, just want to make sure we're being clear about what we're saying. The last sentence in number 5.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, well, it says it's used for
So
rent and which are used for tenants. in the
That
building.
shows this for clarification. The spaces for rent indicate the spaces that are to be leased out for not tenants of the actual building, but for-profit lease parking spaces that can be leased out to other entities.
Can we clarify that in the verbiage so that it's clear, so there can be no confusion about which ones are for rent, and if we're using lease, then we're using lease, and
So okay, I can clarify. I'll just put a clarification statement when I write the final notice of decision at the very end. That's typically just for our records and for any records for review. If the planning commission mentions something such as this would be a perfect example for that. I can put a clarification in there that says any rented parking spaces means the same as the leased parking spaces that are for lease and not for use of the tenants of the property. The 11 parking spaces are designated specifically for the use of the tenants of the building on the property.
The reason I say that, and I'm being nitpicky about it, is because frequently people that are leasing an office space, if they want a parking space specifically for them, then they also have to rent that parking space, which
Sure.
is why I'd like that to be clear.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily common practice here right now, but that is common practice in other places when you rent an office space.
In my life recently, everything that has happened 25, 30 years ago and comes back up, it's nice to have a lot more information than we need than not enough information. So I'm perfectly fine with
Excellent,
clarifying
thank
that.
you.
Anything else, ma'am?
I think that's it. Sorry, I didn't even have any questions for you, just clarifiers.
Problem.
That's all right. Mr. Johnson? Ms. Dahmer?
No questions?
Mr. Kraft?
You actually, Kathy actually asked the question I was going to about the ingress and the egress. And I believe, Mr. Planning Director, that you mentioned there will be, it's been going to be reviewed by the fire department for not parking along the east side of the building, correct?
Yeah. So the fire department routinely conducts inspections of commercial businesses, and that will be part of the fire department's inspection. If we've noticed, anyone in our world notices that there's continuous problems with people parking up against the building, because that's the concern that the fire department has, is not having the sufficient width to get around the building if someone's parked against it. Then the conditions in place just to say that show that the fire department will require additional signage if it becomes an issue.
All right, thank you. I asked that because I did see a vehicle parked on that side of the building when I briefly drove by. So.
Well, and I believe right now, and the applicant can correct me if I'm wrong, but Jordan, can you go back to the photo of the property? I believe the current striping configuration puts cars up against that. When they redo the parking lot, they're going to have to redo that whole striping configuration.
Right, and my understanding is it's going to be, the parking is now going to be on the south side versus against the building. Correct?
That's correct, on the south side and on the east side, and nothing against the building.
Okay. Really, the ingress egress was actually, I had it even circled on my thing, so that's, I have no questions.
That's it? All right. So, Mr. Director, let me ask you a question, and I think Ms. Klezak may have been touching on this. This is a conditional use for this property for this applicant. Should this property be sold down the road, this is not a variance, this is a conditional use. So should the property be sold down the road as a mixed-use building, would the new owner be able to operate it as such, or does it revert back?
Conditional uses stay with the property unless specifically specified as a condition of the approval. So if the new owner was to purchase this property, it could operate under that conditional use permit, which was approved under the conditions and evidence presented to the commission tonight.
Alrighty. The only concern I have, I don't have any questions for you, Matt, but my only concern as this is a commercial property with commercial business to the north, to the south of it, for adding a one-bedroom dwelling unit, I don't know that that's enough of a benefit to change the intent of that zone. A multiplex of 10 apartments, that's worth considering. But my personal opinion is I don't see the benefit. The commercial side, of course.
Yeah, and I'm speaking for the owner and the applicant that I'm representing, so this might not be his exact intentions or the way he would phrase it, but his intention is to use that portion as a transition into using it for his full-time commercial use. So as far as it remaining, the residential component remaining long-term, I suppose it could under the conditional use. But the idea would be that he's transitioning into using this as his primary place of business. And then if either he were to make changes to the property or were to sell it and somebody were to make their own changes to make it work for them, we would go through this same process. So I agree. I don't. The intention isn't to transition it toward a full-time residential property. It's fairly specific to this particular owner's use as he transitions to doing his business practice within Seaside. So I agree. It's kind of a peculiar, small item for the conditional use, but it specifically works for what he is trying to do with the property that he owns now.
So, Mr. Director, let me ask if down the road the property stays within the same ownership and the office park is not necessarily a commercial success, and maybe modifying the building for additional apartments within the building, would the owner have to come before the planning commission again for additional dwelling units?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this approval is going to be specific to one dwelling unit. And I'll touch on one thing just for clarification based on what the representative of the applicant said. If the use as a dwelling unit is converted to a commercial use, which would be outright permitted within the zone, once that use is discontinued for a period of 12 months, that use is considered abandoned, so that would no longer be applicable to the property. Any wish to continue that use after that 12-month abandonment would have to come back to the Planning Commission for review.
All right. Thank you. Anything else from anybody else? All righty. All right, Commission, how say you?
I move we grant the request with the conditions provided.
I'll second that motion.
That's Mr. Johnson and
Brief
Ms.
discussion.
Yes, I'm just writing this down. That's Don and Lou. Further discussion?
Just for clarification, Commissioner Johnson, does that include the added condition?
Yes,
The added-
as
So
As
I'll,
directed to-
I'll read it. Just the modification to condition 4 is going to add a sentence that says parking lot striping will be maintained by the building owner, and ingress from Holiday and ingress egress on Avenue H will, I'll have to wordsmith a little bit, but essentially no egress from onto Holiday Street. We'll put wording together that prohibits egress on Holiday and ingress egress both on Avenue H.
That's it?
Yep, that was my only,
Okay.
make sure.
We have Don and Lou. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. So that is 6-1. And it appears that it has been approved.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, on to ordinance administration.
We have nothing for you tonight. I will update you real quick, though. We have all the contracts signed for the comprehensive plan update. It is moving forward. We will be hopefully scheduling a kickoff meeting with our consultant soon to get the process rolling.
Thank you.
Exciting.
All righty.
And the planning commission will be included in those discussions.
There'll be, the way it's been proposed so far, there will be committees put together that will probably include some planning commissioners, but planning commission will be holding public hearings on this, and any public involvement, as you guys are all members of the public, you're welcome to be involved in that aspect as well.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Any comments from the public that is not regarding anything that was scheduled on this agenda? This is the time to speak up. Nobody? Just observers tonight. All righty. So let's go to Planning Commission and staff comments. Jordan? Jeff, any additional?
I do not have any additional.
Okay. Mr. Rose?
I'm good.
Mr. Newbecker?
I'm even better.
Ms. Gleasack?
I question that.
Yeah.
It's been a roller coaster of a week. I don't have any planning commission things to add for the
Call
for
911.
today.
Let me move on then. You know I love you. Mr. Johnson?
Just thank you all for your concerns.
Ms. Dahmer?
I have nothing.
Mr. Kraft?
No, nothing.
Okay, I have a question.
Woohoo.
So in regards to the revision of the comp plan and all that, will there be discussion, or can we put it on an agenda, or just start a conversation somewhere regarding our zoning in regarding to like how we are like R1 single family? Because, the trend in larger metro areas, of course, is to eliminate all single-family zoning to be able to increase the density. And I know I've mentioned this a million times before, but our population at 7,600 at this time, we're going to be 10,000 before we know it, and we want to be ready. So that discussion of revising that particular zoning structure.
That's one of my goals with the comprehensive plan. One of the things we want to make sure we are doing is setting ourselves up for success for when we hit that 10,000 mark. So if we aren't implementing the ordinances now that will be required when we hit 10,000, to at least have those prepared and ready and have what we need to move on that as soon as we do hit that number. And it'll be up to our public comment. That's going to have a lot of public influence on what the city of Seaside wants. So if it's a requirement by state law, we've got to meet that now. If it's not a requirement by state law, we'll let the public input and the planning commission and the city council decide, is that something we want to implement now and just get ahead of it. Some of the things that the comprehensive plan update is going to do for us is give us that buildable lands inventory, give us a housing needs analysis, give us an economic opportunities analysis. All these different things that are required when we hit that 10,000 population mark, we're going to get that, which is going to put us out in front and hopefully get us ahead of things that are currently implemented by state law. And if, as I'm sure a lot of you are paying attention to what's going on down in Salem right now, there's a lot of things coming down the pipe too that could be new, that could affect us, and set us up to do hopefully a revision of our zoning map and our zoning ordinances as well.
Great. Thank you. Anything else from anybody? That's it?
I was up, my sister lives in Hillsborough, so she gave me a little tour around what's happening around 209th between Farmington and TV Highway. My golly, if that's even a quarter of what's coming, we got a lot of planning to do.
Well, that's why I brought it up.
That was amazing.
Because we live in a beautiful place, and we all live here for the same reason, So
Clam digging.
I don't eat seafood, so it's not the clam thing, I can guarantee you. But we just want to be prepared.
Right.
The citizens are paramount. They're number one. So, we want to make sure everybody's in agreement and we can all, look forward to the future together. So, and with that being said, we're adjourned.
6:28. I was just there on Sunday.